Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a topic that trips up even native speakers: English grammar myths. You know those rules you were taught in school that you follow religiously, but maybe you don't have to. Let's bust some of the biggest myths out there so you can write and speak with more confidence. Ready? Let's get started. Myth number 1, and this is a big one. You can't start a sentence with a conjunction like and, but, or so. How many of you have had a teacher circle that in red ink? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's perfectly fine. And it's been fine for centuries. But don't just take my word for it. Pick up any great novel or reputable newspaper. You'll see sentences starting with conjunctions all over the place. They're used for emphasis, to create a smooth transition, or to give a more conversational tone. So, feel free to use them. But use them wisely. The key is to not overdo it. As long as the sentence is complete and makes sense, you're golden. Next up, the dreaded split infinitive. The myth says you should never put a word between to and a verb. The most famous example, of course, is from Star Trek. To boldly go where no one has gone before. According to this old rule, Captain Kirk should have said, to go boldly. Doesn't sound quite as epic, does it? This rule is actually a leftover from the 18th century when grammarians tried to force English to follow Latin rules, where infinitives are a single word and can't be split. But English is a different language. Sometimes, splitting the infinitive is the clearest and most natural way to say something. For example, you need to really think about it sounds much more natural than you need really to think about it. The goal of grammar is clarity, and if splitting the infinitive helps you achieve that, then go for it. Let's talk about ending sentences with a preposition. Never end a sentence with a preposition. This is another one of those zombie rules that just won't die. It leads to incredibly awkward sentences. Winston Churchill famously mocked it by saying, "This is the sort of English up with which I will not put." Sounds ridiculous, right? It would be much more natural to say, "This is the sort of English I will not put up with." What are you looking at? Who are you talking to? These are perfectly normal, grammatically correct questions. The rule comes from, you guessed it, trying to make English behave like Latin. In modern English, forcing this rule often makes you sound stilted and unnatural. So what's the takeaway? It's a myth you're better off without. Myth number 4, using less for countable nouns is always wrong. You must use fewer. You've probably seen this one in the supermarket express lane. 10 items or fewer. The traditional rule is fewer for things you can count, like apples or mistakes, and less for things you can't, like water or time. So, you have fewer apples and less water. This is a great guideline, but it's not an absolute law. English speakers have been using less with countable nouns for hundreds of years. People say, I have less than $20 in my pocket, not fewer than $20. It's also common when talking about time, distance, or money as single amounts. While using fewer for countable nouns is always correct and sounds more formal, using less is often acceptable in everyday speech and isn't the grammatical crime some people make it out to be. Context is key. Okay, let's tackle the passive voice. The myth is, the passive voice is always bad writing and should be avoided. The passive voice is when the subject of the sentence is acted upon, rather than doing the action. For example, the ball was thrown by the boy is passive, while the boy threw the ball is active. Teachers often discourage the passive voice because it can make writing sound weak, indirect, or evasive. Mistakes were made is a classic example of using passive voice to avoid responsibility. However, the passive voice has legitimate uses. It's useful when the person or thing doing the action is unknown or unimportant. For example, my car was stolen. We don't know who stole it, so the passive voice is perfect. It's also used in scientific and technical writing to sound objective, like, the solution was heated to 100 degrees Celsius. The key isn't to eliminate the passive voice, but to understand when and why you're using it. Use it with purpose, not by accident. Another classic. You must use who for people and that for objects. This is a helpful starting point, but it oversimplifies things. While you would never use who for an inanimate object, you wouldn't say the chair who is in the corner. The word that is incredibly versatile. It can refer to people too. For instance, she's the writer that won the award is perfectly acceptable, as is, she's the writer who won the award. Generally, who can feel a bit more personal and formal when talking about people, but that is not incorrect. Think of the phrase, all the people that came to the party had a great time. It sounds completely natural. So, don't stress if you use that to refer to a person in a general group. The real mistake would be using who for a thing. Let's talk about the word literally. The myth is that literally can only mean in a strict, non-figurative sense. People get very passionate about this one. They'll say, I literally died laughing. No, you didn't, because you're here talking to me. Historically, they're right. Literally means actually, without exaggeration. However, language evolves. For over a century, people have also used literally as an intensifier to add emphasis to a figurative statement. It's used to mean virtually or in effect. Major dictionaries like Merriam-Webster and the Oxford English Dictionary now include this secondary, hyperbolic definition. While it might annoy some purists, this usage has become so common that it's now a recognized part of the English language, especially in informal contexts. My advice? Know your audience. In formal or academic writing, stick to the original meaning. In conversation with friends, you can literally do what you want. Finally, the myth that you can't use they as a singular pronoun. The rule you learned was probably that they is plural, so if you're talking about one person, you must use he or she. But what if you don't know the person's gender, or you want to be inclusive? For years, people have tied themselves in knots writing he or she. For example, every student should bring his or her book. It's clunky. Guess what? Singular they has been used in English for centuries by great writers like Shakespeare and Jane Austen. It's the perfect solution. Every student should bring their book. It's clean, clear, and inclusive. Today, it is fully accepted by almost all major style guides as a grammatically correct way to refer to a single person. It's not a new trend. It's a revival of a very old and useful part of our language. So, there you have it. 8 common grammar myths, totally debunked. The main takeaway is that language is a living, breathing thing. It changes. The ultimate goal of grammar isn't to follow a dusty old rulebook. It's to communicate clearly and effectively. Understanding these rules and knowing when it's okay to break them is what separates a good writer from a great one. Don't be afraid to trust your ear and choose the option that sounds most natural and best expresses your meaning. What other grammar myths have you heard? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.